We are heading into the shortest month of the year, so it seems only right to read the shortest books we can get our hands on. Welcome back to Book Break. I'm going to recommend you a bunch of books that are all under 200 pages long. So these are really quick reads. And in fact, I'm going to set you a challenge. I'm going to recommend you in this video enough books that you could read one every single day of February. Are you up to the challenge? Let me know in the comments if you're going to give it a go. I think it's doable. I've got book recommendations in lots of different genres, so regardless of your reading preferences, you can read something really short and quick. I'm going to start with fiction. So my first book is If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura. This is a really cozy, lovely book for this time of year. It's a really thoughtful book. It's about a man who is diagnosed with a terminal illness, but he strikes up a deal with the devil where he can exchange things from the world. He can cause things to disappear from the world in exchange for him having extra days to live. So the book follows this strange week where he discovers what the world would look like without telephones in it. What would the world look like without chocolate in it? Or of course, what would the world look like if cats disappeared from it? And it's all about what makes life worth living. The Fell is a Sarah Moss literary page-turner about a woman during the November 2020 lockdown who leaves her house and goes on a walk, a solitary walk that she's not supposed to go on, and she has a fall. So what began as something that no one was ever supposed to know about has turned into this mountain rescue operation, and Sarah Moss's writing is just exquisite. The way she writes people's inner thoughts really brings characters to life. Jamaica Kincaid is a great writer if you're looking for really short books. A lot of her books fit the under 200 pages requisite. I've chosen here Annie John, which is arguably her most beloved. This is a coming-of-age classic about a girl growing up in the Caribbean. Passing by Nella Larson is a classic set in 1920s Harlem. It's about a woman who is light-skinned and so she passes as white and has ended up married to this racist white man who has no idea about his wife's racial heritage. But when she reunites with an old school friend who has not chosen to live this life of passing, then tensions ignite. Heaven by Mieko Kawakami is translated from the Japanese by Sam Bett and David Boyd, and this is a story about two school children who form this unlikely friendship as they are both the victim of bullying at school. So it's a really intense book. Again, Mieko Kawakami is a writer who's so good at bringing characters' inner lives to life. For another very dark, intense book, Very Cold People is about emotional abuse of these parents and watching a child grow into her own adulthood while the adults around her have failed to parent her. The Order of the Day by Eric Vuillard and translated into English by Mark Polizzotti is a really interesting novel. This is the kind of novel that could really tempt non-fiction readers over to the fiction side. It's a novelization of real historical accounts of these real meetings that took place between various European powers in the build-up to the Second World War. It's a novel that really gives you this fascinating glimpse into how certain terrible things in our history came to happen. Concerning My Daughter by Kim Hae-jin and translated by Jamie Chang is a really moving book. This is about the relationship between a mother and a daughter. The mother is unable at first to come to terms with her daughter's queerness, and her daughter has just had to move back home because of financial difficulties, and she has brought her girlfriend with her. And the mother is really unable to accept their relationship. But then she starts to draw parallels between her own bias and prejudice against her daughter's life with situations that she comes across at work. So she works caring for the elderly and she finds people there who have also been dismissed by society and had their way of life seen as lesser, and so she starts to draw these parallels and change her mindset on things. The Harpy by Megan Hunter is a kind of dark revenge fairy tale. This is about a woman whose husband betrays her and so she decides to get even. She is allowed to hurt him 3 times. He agrees to this, but he is not allowed to know when the hurt is coming or what kind of hurt it will be, and along the way our main character finds herself going on this sort of transformation. The Most Precious of Cargoes by Jean-Claude Grimberg and translated by Frank Wynne is another fairy tale book, but this one really sad. So it starts in classic fairy tale fashion. There is a woodcutter and his wife who live in the forest and they long for a child. But the story follows their lives intersecting with a real horror of this Jewish man on a train crossing through this forest. He has twin children and no longer enough food to feed both of them, and so in order to try and save both of their lives, he wraps his baby daughter in a shawl and gently throws her from the train. And so this is how their fairy tale begins. The Silence by Don DeLillo is an apocalyptic dystopian novel. This is set in 2022, it's Super Bowl Sunday, and suddenly the screen goes blank. And it seems that civilization as we know it has suddenly come to an end. So it's about the aftermath of an unpredictable crisis striking the world. If you're a big Kindle reader, The Woman on the Island by Anne Cleeves is an ebook exclusive. This is a story as part of the Vera series. This is a story that gives you a little glimpse into Vera's past. The Black Mountain by Kate Moss is a historical fiction novella. This is set in 1706. And it's about a town at the base of a volcano and a girl who feels a tremor in the earth and must warn her town before disaster strikes. And my last from this category is We Had to Remove This Post by Hannah Barefoot, translated by Emma Rout. This is about a young woman who gets a job as a social media moderator. So it's her job to remove things that are classified as hate speech. But the whole team of them working in this department find their morals starting to really slip, because who decides what is and isn't appropriate to post? Who decides what is censorship and what is protecting people? The things they see get worse and worse. They're exposed to conspiracy theories and they find their own morals beginning to flex. So all of those were really short novels or novellas, but you could of course actually read short stories. I have a short story collection here, Salt Slow by Julia Armfield. The whole collection cover to cover is still under 200 pages. And actually Julia Armfield's novel Our Wives Under the Sea I haven't included because it's not quite that short, but it's still only just over 200, so I really recommend that as well. Julia Armfield is a completely mesmerizing writer. These stories are weird and wonderful. They are almost horror, some of them. They're very feminist, they're very bodily. They're about girls and women, but they're these gothic stories, and I couldn't tear myself away. Or you could read 3 novellas in one, still for under 200 pages, in Things to Come and Go by Betty Howland. These stories each follow private moments in the lives of 3 very different women. And Betty Howland has this very tender humour in the way that she writes. She also observes everything, and so these books are full of little witty and wise observations. Next I'm going to recommend some poetry. Poetry is something lovely to read in a little bite-sized way during the shortest month, but again all of these collections are still all in under 200 pages. So first I've got Cannibal by Sophia Sinclair. These poems are inspired by the author's childhood in Jamaica, and they go further back into history to look at the history of race relations, the history of womanhood, of otherness. This beautiful book is a collection of Carol Ann Duffy's poems about love, and they're drawn from across all 4 decades of her work and brings together some of her most beautiful poems, and it just looks stunning. Deep Wheel Arcadia by Harry Josephine Giles is a really unusual book. This is actually a novel in verse. It's a sci-fi novel and it's written in the Orkney dialect, but then each page comes with a parallel translation as well. So something very unusual here. Or this gorgeous tiny little book is The Last Hedgehog by Pam Ayres. This is an illustrated poem. It is a farewell from the last hedgehog on Earth, and it's a book all about how we need to save the hedgehogs. Or you could read some plays in February. Paradise by Kay Tempest is a really bold, gender-fluid retelling of Philoctetes by Sophocles, and if you missed it on stage at the National Theatre, you can read it. Kay Tempest has a real gift for retelling old stories and making them really contemporary and timely and relevant. They also have a poetry collection coming out later this year, Divisible by Itself and One, so do keep your eyes open for that one. The Lamplighter by Jackie Kay was originally produced as a play, but on the page it reads as this beautiful poem. It brings together the stories of 4 women and 1 man, each telling their stories of life in slavery. Or for a classic, you could read Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. That is also under 200 pages. And February is the month of love. Feels like the right month to read a classic love story, the classic love story. Finally, I've got some non-fiction to recommend. So in less than 200 pages, you could learn everything you need to know about the brain in 7.5 lessons. This is 7.5 Lessons About the Brain by Lisa Feldman Barrett. It's a really accessible book to teach you things that you never knew about how your own mind works. Be a Triangle by Lily Singh is a handbook from the really popular YouTuber Lily Singh, teaching you how to find your happiest, truest self. And the idea of being a triangle is showing you how to create this really strong foundation for your life that can't be changed and won't be shaken by the things that your life might throw at you. Walking with Ghosts is the memoir from Gabriel Byrne, the actor, and as if he wasn't talented enough, he's a really incredible writer. He might be a big deal movie star, but the book takes us back to his childhood in Ireland, and it's just stunning. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass is a classic memoir written from an ex-slave, and it tells you his story of his journey from slavery to freedom, and this is a really important memoir because this book was actually really monumental in the abolition of slavery. Frederick Douglass, once he was freed, dedicated his life to that movement, and here you can read his story. And if you made it through February reading a book every day, then you deserve to reward yourself with the absolute treat that is Dear Reader by Kathy Rensenbrink. This is a memoir all about the comfort and joy in books. So Kathy Rensenbrink tells her own story of what books and reading have meant to her in her life, but she fills the pages as well with book recommendations and sharing her love for books that a lot of us also grew up with. She also talks about her job as a bookseller, as a writer, the work that she does with literacy programs in prisons. It's just a book for anyone who loves reading. This captures exactly why reading is so magical for us. And now I'm going to recommend one more book because who knows, you might be watching this in a future year, it might be a leap year, and I'm not going to give you the day off on the 29th of February. Did you know that Animal Farm by George Orwell is less than 200 pages long? You could read a classic all in one day. To be precise, it's actually 104 pages long. You have no excuse for not reading it now. So do let me know in the comments below if you are tempted at all to try reading a book every day of February. But whether or not you're going to set yourself that particular challenge, all of these books are brilliant books under 200 pages and perfect for reading at this time of year. For the complete opposite, I will link here to a video on our biggest books. So do click through if you actually just want something really long to get stuck into this month. And I'll see you next time.